Good morning. I'm doing a voiceover because my roommate is working in the background and the audio didn't pick up very well. But I'm doing a repair on this Star Trek alarm clock. As you can see, the nacelle is broken off of the 1701A there. So I am going to pin the joint here because it's very small and fragile, and without putting a pin in there, it's not going to be very strong. It's already, somebody tried gluing it already and it's broken again. So I have a pin out of my sewing supplies and I found the correct drill bit for my pin vise, and I'm going to drill into the body of the model first and put a good deep hole in there. And then once I had that hole finished, I'm going to be very careful about getting the hole in the nacelle to line up, because when you pin a joint like this, if you don't get the holes lined up incredibly accurately, then the joint will be offset and it'll look weird, and then you'll have to drill new holes again until you get it straight. So while I'm drilling here, short update on the R18. The first package with the ignition module got lost. I did get the second package with the second ignition module they sent out, and then that turned out to be the incorrect unit. It will work for other engines, but not the R18. So they are trying to send me another one, and we'll see how quickly it gets here so I can get the R18 back together and working. But I finished the first hole, and I'm trying to line up on the nacelle here. And I was having some issues, and then I realized I am using a pin out of my sewing supplies, so I can use the tip of the pin as a center punch, or punch to make a pilot hole for the drill bit to go into. So I lined that up and I wiggled it in, pressed it there, and then putting the drill bit against there, it found the hole so I could drill in there. This is going to be a shallow hole because there's not a lot of plastic there. I also spent a lot of time making sure it was running straight into the piece so that it didn't break out the sides. And once I had that done, I had to trim the sharp end off the pin, and I'm cutting toward the ground there to make sure that the piece falls on the workbench instead of flying across the room. And then test fitting that pin, checking the size. I had to trim it twice to get it short enough. If you put the pin in and it's too long, then it holds the joint open. And once I had the pin the correct size here, I glued it into the nacelle first with a dab of super glue. I put a tiny just drop on my workbench there and dipped the end of the pin in the super glue. There we go. It's finished properly here, and now it's time to get that pin glued into the nacelle first. Once it was glued into the nacelle, I glued it onto the body and held it in place until it set. So I let that glue. Now we'll put it into the body here. So dab a glue on the end there and hold it in place for 5 or 10 seconds until it sets. And then I always leave super glue joints for a bit longer than the instructions say, just because I want to make sure that they've set entirely. Yeah, that worked out really well, and hopefully it will stay together for quite some time now.